My dad looked me dead in the eye and said, "You'll never be man enough to run Morrison and Sons," 30 seconds after I'd just secured the biggest contract in our company's 30-year history, a $2.5 million medical center project that would have made our family rich for the next decade. Instead of congratulating me, instead of acknowledging that my 10 years of 60-hour weeks had just saved our struggling construction business, Dad announced he was promoting my basement-dwelling college dropout brother Jake to company president. The betrayal was soul-crushing because I'd literally been living on construction sites for a decade while Jake lived in our parents' basement, perfecting his Call of Duty skills and burning through his unemployment benefits. I'd missed family holidays to finish projects on time, worked through weekends to fix Jake's rare attempts at actual work, and sacrificed every relationship I'd ever had to prove I deserved to inherit Morrison and Sons. 10 years of blood, sweat, and expertise, and Dad's response was to hand my life's work to a 26-year-old man-child who couldn't tell a hammer from a screwdriver. But the pure sadistic enjoyment on Dad's face when he delivered that man-enough line was what really destroyed me. He smiled like he'd been waiting years for the perfect moment to crush my dreams, while Jake sat there smirking like he'd earned something instead of being handed a multi-million-dollar company he was guaranteed to run into the ground within 6 months. Jake's got the natural leadership presence that clients respond to, Dad said with cruel satisfaction, savoring every word of my humiliation. Some men are born to lead, others are born to follow. You're a good support guy, Marcus, but you'll never have what it takes to actually run this business. What Dad didn't know was that I'd been secretly documenting every client relationship, every supplier contact, and every business process for months while planning my exit strategy. The same clients who responded to leadership had been begging me to start my own company, and I'd been quietly building the foundation to steal every major contract Morrison and Sons thought they owned. My dad said I'd never be man enough to run the family business, but I was about to show him what real men do when golden boys steal everything they've worked for. They build empires that destroy the thieves who never deserved anything in the first place. To understand how my own father could destroy me so casually, you need to know what Morrison and Sons meant to our family and how 30 years of building a construction empire was about to be handed to someone who'd never earned the right to touch it. Dad founded the company when I was born, named it Morrison and Sons, with dreams that both Jake and I would someday carry on the legacy he'd built from nothing. For 3 decades, Morrison and Sons had been the go-to construction company for major commercial projects across the region. Dad had earned respect through honest work, quality builds, and treating clients like family. Every award on his office wall represented years of 12-hour days, missed dinners, and the kind of sacrifice that builds generational wealth. But most importantly, Morrison and Sons was supposed to represent everything our family stood for: hard work, technical excellence, and earning respect through competence rather than connections. At least that's what I thought it meant. Morrison and Sons was supposed to be our family's legacy for generations built on merit rather than the favoritism that was about to destroy it. The role I'd been trapped in for 10 years was exactly what Dad called it: the support guy. No matter how many projects I managed flawlessly, no matter how many clients that specifically requested to work with me, no matter how many crisis situations I'd solved, while Jake was nowhere to be found, I was never seen as leadership material. I'd learned every aspect of the construction business from the ground up. Reading blueprints, managing subcontractors, dealing with suppliers, handling building inspectors, negotiating with clients, solving on-site problems that could cost thousands of dollars if handled wrong. 10 years of expertise that made me more qualified to run Morrison and Sons than Dad was at this point. My client relationships were so strong that Thompson Industries had specifically written into their contracts that I had to be the project manager for all their work. Riverside Manufacturing trusted me with their facility expansions. Central Medical Group had told Dad directly that they chose Morrison and Sons because of me, not the company name. I was always the support guy, never the leader they wanted, despite being more qualified than anyone else in the family. But Jake's story was completely different, and watching the golden boy treatment he'd received his entire life made my systematic exclusion even more insulting. While I was learning construction in high school, Jake was getting kicked out of classes for sleeping. While I was working summers on job sites, Jake was working on his tan at the community pool. College was supposed to be his chance to prove himself, but Jake dropped out after 2 semesters when he realized that business classes required actual studying. Instead of consequences, he got sympathy from Dad about how college isn't for everyone, and some people learn better through real-world experience. The real-world experience turned out to be 3 years of unemployment, failed attempts at starting a landscaping business, and living in our parents' basement while playing video games and collecting benefits. But somehow this track record qualified him for immediate promotion to company president. The golden boy got opportunities I had to earn, and he never earned anything. But that didn't matter in our family's twisted version of merit. The final business meeting that sealed my fate happened 2 weeks after Dad's brutal rejection when he called me into the conference room to make my exclusion from Morrison & Sons legally official. The succession planning documents were already prepared with Jake's name in every leadership position and my name conspicuously absent from anything resembling decision-making authority. We've restructured the company hierarchy. Dad announced like he was discussing a minor policy change instead of systematically eliminating me from the family business I'd helped build. Jake will be president with full operational authority, and you'll remain in your current project management role, reporting directly to him. The paperwork made it clear this wasn't temporary or conditional. I was permanently locked out of leadership at Morrison & Sons, destined to spend the rest of my career taking orders from my incompetent brother while he took credit for my work. Dad made it official. I was out of Morrison & Sons, permanently relegated to taking orders from the golden boy forever. Driving home from that meeting, something shifted inside me and I made the decision that would change both our lives forever. If Dad didn't think I was man enough to run Morrison & Sons, I'd build my own construction company and prove him wrong by destroying everything he'd spent 30 years creating. I spent that weekend researching business licenses, incorporation requirements, and competitive analysis. Pinnacle Construction Solutions would be everything Morrison & Sons wasn't: competent leadership, technical excellence, and success earned through merit rather than family connections. If I wasn't man enough for Morrison & Sons, I'd build something better and watch them crumble under the weight of their golden boy's incompetence. The family's reaction to my announcement was exactly what I'd expected: dismissive laughter and condescending predictions about how quickly my little venture would fail when faced with real competition. Dad actually chuckled when I told him about Pinnacle Construction Solutions, like the idea of me succeeding independently was the funniest joke he'd heard all year. "It's cute that you think you can compete with a 30-year established business," Jake said with that smug superiority that came from never having his confidence tested by actual failure. "Good luck trying to steal our clients with your startup." Mom tried to be supportive, but delivered it with the same patronizing tone. "It's good for Marcus to try something on his own. Maybe this will help him understand why some people are cut out for leadership and others aren't." They laughed when I started Pinnacle Construction Solutions, like watching me fail was going to be their new favorite entertainment. While Jake spent his first month as Morrison & Sons president learning what a profit margin was and trying to figure out the difference between commercial and residential zoning, I was incorporating Pinnacle Construction Solutions and building the foundation for everything Morrison & Sons should have been, but never could be under incompetent leadership. I registered the business, secured initial funding through my personal savings and industry contacts, and purchased equipment that was newer and more efficient than anything Morrison & Sons owned. But most importantly, I hired 2 experienced project managers who'd been frustrated working under Jake's clueless supervision and were eager to join a company where competence actually mattered. Every decision I made was based on 10 years of watching Morrison & Sons do things the hard way, the expensive way, or just plain wrong under Dad's old-school methods and Jake's complete ignorance. While Jake played president, I built a real construction company with actual standards and competent leadership. The competitive advantages I developed over a decade of real experience became Pinnacle Construction's secret weapons against Morrison & Sons' increasingly outdated approach to modern construction. I implemented project management software that could track costs and timelines in real-time, established relationships with suppliers who offered better pricing for faster payment, and developed quality control systems that virtually eliminated the costly mistakes Jake was already making weekly. Every process improvement came from years of watching Morrison & Sons waste money on problems that could have been prevented with basic competence. Every efficiency gain represented knowledge that Jake would take years to learn if he ever learned it at all. My cost estimates were more accurate because I understood actual project requirements instead of guessing. My timelines were realistic because I'd managed enough projects to know what could go wrong. My client presentations were professional because I'd been the one doing them for Morrison & Sons while Jake was perfecting his Xbox skills. I had 10 years of knowledge Jake would never possess, and every day he stayed in charge made Morrison & Sons less competitive. But the family's reaction to my early success was predictably dismissive, treating Pinnacle Construction Solutions like a hobby that would burn itself out once I faced real competition from established businesses like Morrison & Sons. Dad made jokes about my cute little startup during family dinners, while Jake expressed mock concern about whether I was in over my head trying to run a business. It's just a phase. Dad told anyone who'd listen, including potential clients who mentioned they'd heard about my new company. Marcus needs to get this entrepreneurship thing out of his system before he realizes how difficult it really is to compete with 30 years of experience. Jake nodded along with his newly minted presidential wisdom. He'll be back asking for his old job once he understands what real business pressure feels like. Running a company isn't as easy as managing a few projects. It's just a phase. Dad told everyone who'd listen like success was something I'd grow out of once I faced real competition. That confidence lasted exactly 3 months until Thompson Industries, Morrison & Sons' biggest client for 5 years, called a meeting to discuss their upcoming facility expansion project. I submitted a bid that was 15% lower than Morrison & Sons' quote, while offering a timeline that was 3 weeks faster and included project management technology they'd never seen before. Thompson's CEO made the decision in the conference room. We've worked with Morrison & Sons for years, but Pinnacle Construction Solutions offers superior project management and cost efficiency. Business is about results, not relationships. Thompson Industries chose competence over family connections, and suddenly my cute little startup had stolen the biggest contract Jake thought he owned. Thompson Industries was just the beginning of my systematic campaign to steal every major client Morrison & Sons thought they owned permanently. Within 6 months, I'd submitted competitive bids to Riverside Manufacturing for their warehouse expansion, Central Medical Group for their new clinic facility, and 3 other clients who'd been loyal to Morrison & Sons for over a decade. The strategy was simple but devastating. Offer superior project management, more accurate cost estimates, and faster completion times while undercutting Morrison & Sons' pricing by just enough to make the decision obvious. Every bid I submitted was backed by 10 years of watching Morrison & Sons overcharge clients for inefficient processes and outdated methods. Riverside Manufacturing's facilities manager put it perfectly. Pinnacle Construction Solutions offers everything Morrison & Sons does, but better, faster, and cheaper. This is business, not charity. Every month, another major client chose Pinnacle over Morrison & Sons, and Dad's 30-year customer loyalty evaporated when faced with actual competition. But the real competitive advantage came from leveraging the supplier relationships I'd developed during my 10 years of actually doing the work while Jake was perfecting his gaming skills. Equipment rental companies gave Pinnacle Construction priority scheduling because they knew I'd manage their relationships professionally, unlike Jake, who treated vendors like servants who should be grateful for Morrison & Sons' business. Material suppliers offered better pricing for faster payment terms, delivery schedules that kept projects on track, and quality products because they trusted my competence over Morrison & Sons' increasingly chaotic purchasing decisions under Jake's clueless management. When Central Medical Group needed specialized steel delivered on a tight deadline, my supplier contacts made it happen in 3 days. Morrison & Sons would have needed 3 weeks and charged premium pricing for the rush order that was actually standard service for competent companies. The suppliers respected competence more than the Morrison name, and that respect translated into competitive advantages Jake couldn't match. Meanwhile, Jake's management of Morrison & Sons was becoming a masterclass in how incompetent leadership destroys established businesses faster than any external competition ever could. Projects that should have taken 3 months were stretching to 6 months because Jake couldn't read construction schedules properly. Cost overruns were becoming routine because he'd approve change orders without understanding their financial implications. Client complaints started rolling in about missed deadlines, surprise charges, and basic mistakes that seasoned project managers would never make. The medical center project I'd secured before leaving, the $2.5 million contract that should have been Morrison and Son's biggest success, was already 3 weeks behind schedule and $50,000 over budget. Jake's attempts at client management were particularly painful to watch from a distance. He'd show up to job sites in expensive suits and try to charm his way through problems that required technical solutions, treating construction like a networking event instead of a precision business. The Golden Boy was proving he couldn't manage a lemonade stand, let alone a multi-million-dollar construction company. That's when the family panic started setting in, and suddenly my cute little startup wasn't looking so temporary or harmless anymore. Emergency family meetings were called to discuss unfair competition and client retention strategies, as if loyalty could overcome incompetence indefinitely. Dad started personally calling clients to remind them about Morrison and Son's 30-year track record, while Jake tried to match my pricing with desperate discounts that only highlighted how overpriced their work had always been. Suddenly, Morrison and Sons was fighting for survival against the son they'd rejected, and their Golden Boy strategy was crumbling faster than their client base. By the end of year one, I had compiled a financial analysis that told the complete story of how competent leadership systematically destroys incompetent competition, even when that competition has a 30-year head start and family loyalty on their side. The spreadsheet was beautiful in its brutal clarity. Pinnacle Construction Solutions had generated $2.8 million in revenue, while Morrison and Sons had dropped to $2 million less than half their previous year's performance. But the numbers told an even more devastating story when you looked at profit margins. Pinnacle Construction was operating at 18% profit because efficient project management and supplier relationships meant fewer costly mistakes and better pricing. Morrison and Sons was barely breaking even at 3% profit because Jake's management style involved learning expensive lessons that any competent leader would have avoided. The cost per project comparison was particularly satisfying. My average project came in 2% under budget and finished 1 week early, while Morrison and Sons projects averaged 15% over budget and 3 weeks late. Clients were literally paying more money for inferior service and then waiting longer to get it. The numbers proved Morrison and Sons was hemorrhaging money while Pinnacle thrived, and every month the gap widened as Jake's incompetence compounded. The client defection documentation was even more damning than the financial analysis, because it wasn't just about money, it was about professional reputation and industry relationships that took decades to build and could be destroyed in months under incompetent leadership. Every major client had chosen competence over the Morrison legacy, and their reasons were brutally honest. Thompson Industries project manager had written, "Pinnacle Construction Solutions delivered our facility expansion 3 weeks early and 12% under budget, while our previous Morrison and Sons projects consistently ran over timeline and over budget. Business decisions are about results, not nostalgia." Riverside Manufacturing was more direct. Marcus Morrison's technical expertise and project management skills are significantly superior to Morrison and Sons' current leadership. We're not paying premium prices for amateur hour management. Essential Medical Group's facilities director delivered the most brutal assessment. Morrison and Sons used to be the gold standard for commercial construction. Under current management, they're struggling to meet basic professional standards. Every major client had chosen competence over the Morrison legacy, and their written testimonials proved that reputation follows performance, not family names. But beyond client relationships, the industry recognition I'd earned in just 1 year made it clear that professional respect couldn't be inherited or handed down. It had to be earned through consistent excellence. The Regional Construction Excellence Award for Project Innovation had never gone to a first-year company, but Pinnacle Construction Solutions' advanced project management systems and cost efficiency had impressed the industry association enough to break precedent. Trade publications were featuring articles about innovative approaches to traditional construction challenges, with Pinnacle Construction Solutions cited as an example of how modern management techniques could revolutionize project delivery. The State Contractors Association had invited me to speak at their annual conference about efficient project management, an honor that Morrison and Sons had never achieved in 30 years. Meanwhile, Dad's construction industry friends were quietly asking me about opportunities at Pinnacle Construction Solutions because they'd heard about the superior working conditions and professional management approach. The industry recognized what my family never would. Real leadership earns respect through competence, not inheritance. The documentation of Morrison & Sons' systematic decline was almost too easy to compile because Jake's failures were becoming legendary throughout the regional construction community. Employee turnover had reached 60% as experienced workers left for companies where their skills were appreciated and properly managed. The company's bonding capacity had been reduced because insurance companies were concerned about project completion reliability under current management. Most telling was the fact that Morrison & Sons had been forced to turn down 3 major projects because they lacked the financial reserves and management capability to handle complex commercial construction, projects that Pinnacle Construction Solutions completed successfully while building industry reputation. Morrison & Sons was becoming a cautionary tale about nepotism, while Pinnacle Construction Solutions was becoming the success story that proved merit beats inheritance. That's when Dad's 60th birthday party invitation arrived, with a note about celebrating 60 years of Frank Morrison's life and 40 years of Morrison & Sons' success at the finest steakhouse in town. The guest list included every major player in the regional construction industry, all the clients who'd switched to Pinnacle Construction Solutions, and all the suppliers who now prioritized my company over Morrison & Sons. But the most important detail was buried in the formal program: special announcement regarding Jake Morrison's promotion to company president and the future leadership of Morrison & Sons. The guest list for Dad's 60th birthday party read like a who's who of regional construction industry leaders, which meant my public vindication would have the perfect audience of witnesses who could appreciate the full scope of how systematically I destroyed Morrison & Sons through superior competence. Thompson Industries' CEO would be there along with project managers from Riverside Manufacturing and Central Medical Group, all the clients who'd abandoned Morrison & Sons for Pinnacle Construction Solutions. More importantly, the State Contractors Association president would be attending, along with the Regional Construction Excellence Award committee members who'd recognized my innovation. These weren't just random party guests. They were the industry authorities whose validation would make my vindication complete and undeniable. The timing couldn't have been more perfect, with Jake's promotion announcement scheduled during dinner when everyone would be paying attention, and no one could escape the comparison between his inherited authority and my earned success. The entire construction industry would witness my vindication, and Jake's promotion would become the punchline to his own incompetence. But before the party, I had one final client acquisition that would complete Morrison & Sons' systematic destruction: Meridian Corporate Complex, the biggest commercial project to hit the regional market in 5 years. The contract was worth $2 million and would establish whoever won it as the dominant construction company in the area. Morrison & Sons had been courting Meridian for months, with Jake personally handling the relationship because Dad thought his natural leadership presence would close the deal. But I'd been working my industry contacts and had secured a meeting with Meridian's board of directors to present Pinnacle Construction Solutions' proposal. My bid was 8% lower than Morrison & Sons' quote included a timeline that was 6 weeks faster and offered project management technology that Jake didn't even know existed. More importantly, I had the track record of completed projects on time and under budget that Jake would never possess. I was about to take the last major contract Morrison & Sons had any chance of winning, and their golden boy would have nothing left to inherit but debt. The family's desperate countermeasures became increasingly pathetic as they realized their comfortable family business was being systematically dismantled by the son they'd rejected. Dad started calling in favors with old clients, trying to leverage 30-year relationships that couldn't overcome Jake's consistent project failures and cost overruns. Jake attempted damage control by promising impossible timelines and unrealistic pricing that only highlighted how little he understood about actual construction costs. His negotiations with potential clients became increasingly frantic as he realized that inherited authority meant nothing when faced with proven competence. Mom even got involved, calling the wives of potential clients to suggest that family loyalty should factor into business decisions, as if personal relationships could overcome Jake's professional incompetence indefinitely. Their desperation was becoming obvious to everyone in the industry, and nothing exposes incompetence faster than watching someone panic under pressure they should be able to handle. Meanwhile, I was preparing for the ultimate confrontation that would prove definitively who was man enough to lead in the construction industry. I organized all my financial documentation, client testimonials, and industry recognition into a presentation that would destroy any remaining illusion about Jake's qualifications or Morrison and Sons' viability under his leadership. But more than the professional evidence, I was emotionally ready to face the father who'd crushed my dreams and the brother who'd stolen my inheritance. 10 years of proving myself had prepared me for this moment when industry witnesses would validate what my family had refused to acknowledge. I was finally ready to show them who was man enough, and this time the entire construction industry would be watching when I proved it. The upscale steakhouse was packed with everyone who mattered in the regional construction industry, creating the perfect audience for what was about to become the most satisfying professional vindication of my career. Thompson Industries' CEO was there, along with project managers from every major client who'd abandoned Morrison and Sons for Pinnacle Construction Solutions. The State Contractors Association president had a front-row table, and the Regional Construction Excellence Award committee members were scattered throughout the dining room. Dad worked the room like the successful businessman he'd once been, introducing Jake as the future president of Morrison and Sons to industry leaders who knew exactly how badly the company was failing under his leadership. The irony was beautiful. Every handshake was with someone who'd either switched to my company or heard about Jake's project management disasters. The steakhouse was full of everyone who mattered in construction, and they were all about to witness the Golden Boy's complete humiliation. When Dad tapped his wine glass for attention and began Jake's formal promotion announcement, the room fell silent in the way that happens when people sense they're about to witness something historically awkward. Jake stood up with that confident smile he'd inherited, along with his unearned authority, looking like he was about to accept a well-deserved honor instead of being publicly exposed as a fraud. "Ladies and gentlemen," Dad announced with genuine pride, "I'm thrilled to announce that my son Jake Morrison has officially been promoted to president of Morrison and Sons. At 26 years old, he represents the future of our family business and embodies the natural leadership qualities that will guide our company for the next 30 years. The applause was polite but noticeably lukewarm, especially from the table where Thompson Industries executives sat with barely concealed amusement. Jake's promotion speech included buzzwords about innovative leadership and expanding market presence that sounded impressive until you realized he was describing everything his company was failing to deliver. "Jake Morrison, president of Morrison and Sons," Dad announced proudly while the industry leaders who'd switched to my company tried not to laugh. That's when I stood up and delivered the financial reality check that would destroy both their reputations simultaneously. The room's attention shifted to me as I pulled out the comparative analysis spreadsheet that told the complete story of competent leadership versus inherited incompetence. "Since we're celebrating Morrison and Sons tonight," I said with the calm confidence of someone who'd earned the right to speak, "I thought everyone should know how the industry has responded to Jake's leadership over the past year. Pinnacle Construction Solutions has generated $2.8 million in revenue, while Morrison and Sons dropped to $1.2 million. Less than half their previous performance." The silence in the room was deafening as industry leaders processed the numbers that made Jake's promotion announcement look like a cruel joke. Dad's face went pale, but I wasn't finished destroying their professional reputations in front of their peers. "Our profit margins tell an even better story. Pinnacle operates at 18% profit through efficient management, while Morrison and Sons barely breaks even at 3%, because projects consistently run over budget and behind schedule under current leadership. Pinnacle Construction has taken every major contract Morrison used to hold, and the numbers prove why clients choose competence over family connections. But the real devastation came when the clients themselves started speaking up, turning my financial presentation into a public testimonial parade that buried Morrison and Sons' reputation forever." Thompson Industries' CEO stood up first, his voice carrying the authority of someone who controlled millions in construction contracts. "We switched to Pinnacle Construction Solutions after working with Morrison and Sons for 5 years, he announced to the room. "Marcus delivers projects early and under budget, while Morrison and Sons consistently missed deadlines, and exceeded cost estimates. Business decisions are about results, not nostalgia. Riverside Manufacturing's project manager joined in. Pinnacle's technical expertise and project management are significantly superior to Morrison & Sons' current capabilities. We're not paying premium prices for amateur management. Central Medical Group's facilities director delivered the final blow. Morrison & Sons used to be the gold standard. Under current leadership, they struggle to meet basic professional standards. We switched to Pinnacle because Marcus delivers what Morrison couldn't, the clients announced, while Jake stood there, speechless and humiliated. The moment when Dad finally acknowledged the truth was worth every year of being called not man enough, and watching the golden boy get opportunities I'd earned through competence. His voice cracked with the weight of realizing he'd destroyed his own legacy by choosing favoritism over merit. "You've proven you're more man enough than any of us," Dad admitted to the room full of industry witnesses. "I was wrong about leadership, wrong about Jake, and wrong about what it takes to run a successful construction company." The admission was everything I'd worked for. Public validation from the father who'd crushed my dreams, delivered in front of the entire industry that would remember this moment forever. "You've proven you're more man enough than any of us," Dad admitted while the construction industry watched the Golden Boy system collapse. Morrison & Sons died in that steakhouse, killed by inherited incompetence and the systematic proof that real leadership can't be handed down like a family heirloom. Jake's promotion became the punchline to his own professional funeral, while every industry leader in the room witnessed the complete destruction of a 30-year family business by the son they'd rejected. The Golden Boy had nothing left to inherit except debt and humiliation, while the support guy had built an empire that buried them both. The aftermath of that birthday party humiliation was swift and devastating for Morrison & Sons, as 30 years of family business reputation crumbled under the weight of Jake's exposed incompetence and Dad's public admission that he'd chosen favoritism over merit. Within 3 months, their remaining clients had jumped ship to competitors who could actually deliver projects on time and on budget. Employee exodus accelerated as experienced workers realized they were trapped on a sinking ship captained by someone who couldn't read construction blueprints. The company's bonding capacity was revoked when insurance companies decided that Morrison & Sons represented an unacceptable risk under current management. Dad was forced to close the business he'd spent 30 years building because the Golden Boy he'd chosen to lead it had proven he couldn't manage a construction project, let alone an entire company. Morrison & Sons was finished and everyone knew it, killed by the inherited incompetence Dad had mistaken for natural leadership. Meanwhile, Pinnacle Construction Solutions became everything Morrison & Sons should have been, but never could be under nepotistic leadership. The Meridian Corporate Complex project I'd won established my company as the dominant commercial construction firm in the region. Industry recognition continued pouring in, including a State Contractors Association Excellence Award and invitations to speak at national construction management conferences. More importantly, the clients who'd switched from Morrison & Sons were telling other potential customers about Pinnacle Construction's superior service, creating a referral network that generated more business than I could handle. I had to hire additional project managers and expand operations to meet demand that Morrison & Sons had never achieved even at their peak. Pinnacle Construction became everything Morrison & Sons never could be. A company where competence determined authority and results mattered more than family connections. Looking back now, I realize that Dad's brutal rejection was actually the greatest favor he could have given me because it forced me to prove that real leadership can't be inherited, appointed, or handed down like a family heirloom. Being told I wasn't man enough to run Morrison & Sons pushed me to build something superior that demonstrated what actual competence looks like when it's not constrained by family politics and Golden Boy favoritism. Jake got the family business he'd never earned, and I got the satisfaction of watching him destroy it while I built an empire based on merit instead of inheritance. Dad learned too late that choosing favorites over qualifications doesn't create leaders. It creates expensive disasters that destroy everything you've worked to build. Being man enough isn't about family approval or inherited authority. It's about proving your worth every single day through competence, integrity, and results that speak louder than any family name ever could.